gets to live with them? Is that what you?
Yeah, so when residents have an ownership stake in our units, they get to be part of the resident selection process. They still have to abide by fair housing laws and other such, but they get to decide who gets to live with them. Of course, we at the community lounge just encourage things to be fair. We look at things of like folks who have been displaced within the community, lower income levels, but they together have the ability to also build relationship with folks. So in one of our co-ops, they actually, invite prospective members or residents to join them in community to learn about what it means to be in community control housing, and then have an understanding of what it means to cooperatively operate their housing. And so that's sort of part of their resident selection process, but every building looks different in that model. Yeah.
And then is there a property manager who like collects the rents and
Yeah, so when our co-ops have an on-site property manager or resident manager, for some of the buildings, we do it. For some of the buildings, some of the residents have, we also built the capacity of our residents to be able to do that. So we also hope residents be able to learn the skill sets to run their property, to collect rent, do the maintenance, also manage conflict resolution, and actually do preventive work for this displacement in the event that a resident can't pay for rent. So we've never evicted anyone, and we as an organization have been in operations for about 15 years. And so these co-ops were bought in '96, but officially were created around 2011. That's 15, right?
All right, thank you.
And collectively, we have 60 units. The ones that are 60, yes. Collectively that are under cooperative governance are about 49 to 50.
Gloria Martinez.
Good afternoon, members of the COC. My name is Gloria Martinez. I am a special education teacher, and I'm currently serving as treasurer at United Teachers Los Angeles. UTLA is a proud member of the UHLA Coalition. As educators, we stand in support of the identified goals of Measure ULA and encourage the COC and recommend to the City Council and of the city, including our students and families, for a need of social housing programs that provide, again, permanent affordability, resident governance, and focuses on new construction. Requiring permanent affordable covenants and formal partnerships between community-based organizations and developers in ULA's alternate models and permanent affordable housing program guidelines are critical to create good homes that combat displacement for good. Social housing in Los Angeles has the potential to fundamentally transform the relationship between residents and housing. When done right, social housing would stabilize families, including the 18,000 plus students, LAUSD students currently facing homelessness. We need folks in their homes for generations and accord residents with a true sense of agency that fosters long-term community building, which for us as educators translates into more students in their seats, learning, and less absenteeism due to housing insecurities. As a longtime special education teacher, UTLA and the Coalition are very supportive of rolling out income support programs, which will get $11 million into the hands of seniors and persons with disabilities. It is time we do right by our persons with disabilities and our elderly, and that time is right now. We also recommend that the COC should recommend to the City Council that they should commit to additional funding to ULA programs, even while litigation is pending. Thank you.
So I think can we have one more question from the commission?
Of course.
Okay. Go ahead, Alma. UTLA, would you?
Yes. Additional funds for
the request that you asked to.
Oh, for the litigation, like to provide the ULA funds even while pending litigation. So while the litigation is going through, we believe that the ULA funds should be utilized with the goals that are set accordingly. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have Anna Ferrer next, but I'd also like to call up Andrea Volos and Reverend Ray Huang to be next up in line.
Hi, good afternoon. It's Anna Ferrari, and I'm a member of the Anti-Eviction Mapping Project and part of the United to House LA Coalition. I want to echo what was just said about the budget. It's really alarming that the money hasn't been allocated for ULA programs for the next fiscal year yet. And I feel like the budget shortfall in general is scary. And to me, that speaks to that underscores why funding like ULA is needed. Please raise your voices as the COC to tell the mayor and to tell city council that not funding these programs until the litigation ends, however short-term they think that's going to be, it's going to undercut those programs. There are 5 programs that were funded in year 1 that need continued funding. There's 6 programs that need to ramp up and hire people and get off the ground. And stuff like the emergency rental assistance, if that's not continually funded, then more tenants are going to be evicted. And then I also wanted to say that please approve the interim guidelines for the income support for seniors and people with disabilities. I have a family member who lived on SSI and disability, and he worked as much as he was able to without having his benefits reduced, and that was not enough to afford an apartment in LA. He was really lucky and he had family support, but he wanted nothing other than to live independently, and he couldn't do that. So thank you.
Andrea Volos.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Vocos, and I'm the Housing Coalitions Manager for United Way of Greater Los Angeles, and I run the Our Future LA Coalition, which is a member of the United to House LA Coalition as well. I'm here today to encourage the COC to recommend to the City Council that we shape the alternative model for permanent affordable housing program to require permanent affordability and resident governance. We've seen the housing instability that comes from expiring affordability covenants versus affordable covenants existing in perpetuity, something that affects seniors and adults with disabilities in particular. We can help prevent homelessness and help families thrive and build generational security and wealth. The alternative model is a critical opportunity to establish social housing in Los Angeles, and we can help set the standard for social housing countywide as well, which is something that at United Way and Our Future LA is something that's very important for us. Resident governance would also truly transform the dynamic between residents and our landlords and our housing. Tenants can establish a sense of agency and have the ability to advocate for their specific needs, in addition to fostering closer knit community, which also helps create safer communities as well. We encourage the COC to help achieve the goals of Measure ULA and recommend to City Council that the social housing program requires permanent affordability and resident governance. Thank you.
Next up was Reverend Ray Huang.
Hello, I'm Reverend Ray Huang, Senior Organizer at Housing Now and also a pastor here in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. Housing Now is a statewide housing justice coalition of which many local Los Angeles organizations are a member and sit on our steering committee. As a statewide organizer, I urge the COC to recommend to the City Council that the social housing program requires permanent affordability and resident governance and emphasizes new construction, as well as advances the funding that it requires for the program to actually be successful. Whether or not you are aware of it, state leaders and national leaders are actually looking at Los Angeles because of the fact that we did pass Measure ULA. When Measure ULA and your experts, amazing experts here, your community leaders worked together to advocate for what we needed here in Los Angeles, our state leaders, as well as our federal leaders, actually shaped their policies and bills and recommendations, including the passage of SB 555 based on what we passed here in Measure ULA. If we were not to continue the permanent affordability component as well as the resident management parts of this particular measure, we would be remiss in actually following through and staying in tune and aligned with what we are doing federally and across the state right now. I strongly urge you to move forward on this. In particular, I want to highlight the fact that the LA Times article this week talked about the lack of political imagination on our housing affordability crisis in our state and in our local areas. We have an opportunity as Los Angeles, and I'm a proud Angelina to say that, as a proud mother to say that we can actually do something new. We are creating something and advancing something great, but we will not be able to do it if you do not follow along with what the expectations were when our voters passed Measure ULA. So I highly urge you to move forward with this and make sure that we get the funds we need to pass this and to make this move forward well. Otherwise, if we are not successful, it would be quite a disappointment for both myself and our communities here in Los Angeles.
We have three virtual speakers. So the first one, I only have the first name, Maria.
Yes. Hello. Hi, my name is Maria Patiño Gutierrez. Do I just start talking?
Yes.
Okay, hi. I'm with Sage and I'm a member of ACT LA. We're members of ACT LA and the UHLA Coalition, and I'm also a resident in District 14, a tenant and a mom. I'm here today to encourage the COC to recommend to the City Council that this program requires permanent affordability and resident governance and emphasizes new construction. ULA's program that funds an alternative model for permanent affordable housing is a critical opportunity to establish social housing in LA. Social housing in LA has the potential to fundamentally transform the relationship between residents and our housing. When done right, social housing will stabilize families and their homes for generations, with a true sense of agency that fosters long-term community building. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fanny.
Hi, everybody. My name is Fanny Guzman. I am with El Sereno Community Land Trust, but I'm also a member of SEIU Local 2015. I am a single mother and I am a resident of CD 14. And we are proud members of the United to House LA Coalition. I just want to start with let's not let anti-tax interest groups and the luxury real estate industry stop our city's progress towards addressing our housing and homelessness crisis. This is a critical program for aiding some of our most vulnerable neighbors who are very at risk of grave threats of their health based on their housing security. We encourage the COC to help achieve the goals of Measure ULA and recommend to the City Council that this social housing program requires permanent affordability and resident governance and emphasize new construction. And I also want to echo what Casey shared. When using public funding to create innovative holistic frameworks to sustain housing for the most vulnerable, we need to make sure we are working from the bottom up. We need to ensure that we are funding housing-related entities that are inclusive of the most vulnerable needs and wants. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Jessica.
Okay, let's go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Melendez. I'm with Trust South LA and a member of the United to House LA Coalition. I strongly urge the COC to recommend to City Council that they commit funding to all ULA programs, even with litigation pending. It is important that we commit ourselves to the renters and residents that voted for ULA and ultimately commit ourselves to resolving this crisis. Given where we are with the state budget, Angelenos simply cannot wait until litigation is over to pay overdue rent. Angelenos facing displacement cannot wait until after litigation for the hope of social housing to come. They cannot wait until litigation is over to get legal representation for tenant harassment that they're facing now. They need ULA funded now. And so I also want to add that as someone who works in a community land trust, a model for social housing, I would strongly encourage the COC to recommend to the City Council that this alt models program requires permanent affordability and resident governance, and also emphasizes new construction. We really want to continue to see more innovative solutions to this housing crisis, and we believe that this alt models program, the way that it's been developed by advocates, is the way to do so. Thank you.
We have no more speakers.
Thank you all. Sincerely, thank you all for public comment. That concludes this item. We are moving that on now to item number 4, which is the COC Chair's Report. I want to address the March 11th cancellation. April 11th cancellation. Thank you very much. Because we were unable to reach a quorum. While I understand that folks have other commitments outside the COC, I encourage COC members to communicate with the IIG and myself about any absences or issues with capacity. We have really important work on the horizon, and we have a really diverse set of interests that we want to have weigh in on all of those issues in the future. So that's all I'll say. Regarding the permanent guidelines, I want to tell you a little bit about our process. So while this happened in March, I'm pleased to announce the appointment of Laura Raymond to the ad hoc subcommittee. Did we announce this? I don't recall. We're going to announce it again if we
didn't meet in April.
we didn't, right, okay, so Laura Raymond has been added to the ad hoc subcommittee on permanent program guidelines. She currently serves as the director of Alliance for Community Trust, Los Angeles. I'm used to just saying ACT LA, sorry about that. And she's joined by myself and committee members Morales, Sharma, Gata, Mendez Lemos on this ad hoc committee. So welcome, belated welcome. The ad hoc has been working really hard to bring the ULA permanent program guidelines to the full COC for deliberation. Since our March COC meeting, the ad hoc itself, so just this group of 6 folks, has met 4 times to develop recommendations for production and homeless prevention program guidelines. On top of that, we've met separately with what's called the working group, another 3 times. The working group includes the mayor's office, council representatives from council offices 3 and 4, the coalition and LAHD. And through those, we've heard comments and suggestions on all of the ad hoc permanent. We've discussed all of our recommendations. So a total of 7 times. I just wanted to point that out. We've met 7 times in the last 2 months? 2 months. The ad hoc recommendations then go to LAHD's technical writer for guideline drafting. Drafts will be reviewed and revised by our ad hoc members before coming to you all, the COC. The permanent guidelines will be heard and hopefully approved during our next 2 COC meetings, which is another reason why I bring up really wanting you all here at the table. The COC then recommends the guidelines, and then those will get transmitted to the city council. We've made tremendous progress, in all honesty, on the permanent guidelines, and we're looking forward to deliberating with you all, the full COC. And honestly, we really have made tremendous progress. The fact that we're really today only discussing alt models in this forum is, I think, a testament to that. So thank you all for all your work. Thank you. Are there any questions about the process regarding the permanent guidelines? With that, I think that closes item number 4 and moves us on to item number 5, which is the Interim Inspector General's report. I now invite the team to provide a brief update.
Great, thanks, Michelle, or thank you, Madam Chair. Very briefly, I want to share some IIG staffing updates. First, I'd like to introduce you to Abigail Kosholik, who is going to raise her hand. She's going to be the newest member of our IIG team. Kevin Liu, raise your hand, Kevin, who I think many of you have come to know and love, will be stepping away from the project. He's taken the job with the mayor's office to work on the infrastructure team. So we wish him well, but we're going to get as much work out of him until the very last minute. So thank you, Kevin, for your work. Okay, a couple of things just to go through the report. First off, talking about the ULA revenue collected above $150 million. We had a discussion of this at the March COC meeting. After that discussion, the COC made a recommendation that that money should be spent, that money revenue collected above the $150 million that had been allocated by the city council last year should continue to be spent. As a result of that motion and discussion, we drafted a letter to the LA City Council Budget Finance and Innovations Committee Chair, Councilmember Blumenfeld, and forwarded it. We provided copies to LEHD, key council offices, as well as each member on this committee. So that's been transmitted. On the budget, next on our agenda, as we outlined in our work plan, we've been working on the process of a detailed revenue and expense report for the COC's annual budget. You have it up on the screen. It's still a work in progress, as you'll note, because part of it is trying to get a sense of what do we think will come down as a budget for you all. If there'll be an augmentation to your budget, or if you're going to be forced to continue with that, just the amount that was allocated out of the initial 150 million. So this is the conservative approach, assuming no other revenues are allocated to ULA implementation, and therefore no other revenues are allocated to this oversight committee. You'll see our projections for the conclusion of this year and next year, 2024 to 25. 229,000 will be remaining at the start of your fiscal year, which will be July 1st. Of that, we have a contract to continue work with you through the end of December. That would be $120,000. There would still be 6 more months left in the fiscal year, and a permanent inspector general would need to be appointed. And we're just going to estimate that it's at the same burn rate of 120,000. You'll see the website startups, the webinars, all of that's pretty minimal. Annual external audit, there is a provision in the ordinance requiring or authorizing the COC to engage with a third party for an external audit. We've put that in there. It's not a requirement, but in case you did want to do an external audit of the revenues and expenditures of ULA this initial year, we estimate that would take about $10,000. And then minimal amount for the town hall, again, also required in the measure itself, which would be a subtotal of 133,000, assuming that the permanent inspector general is the same cost as we cost, there would be a deficit of $24,203. So just wanted to make that clear, that that's would happen if there aren't any further funds augmented. Again, we will adjust this as the budget discussions continue at the city council and with the mayor's office. Okay, I want to then turn it over to Richard, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the town hall. Again, that's in the ordinance that every year you are supposed to be conducting a town hall, and Richard has been working on that. Richard France. Wait.
Thanks,
Oh,
Cecilia.
yeah.
All right, so this will be quick. So first thing is just in terms of the external audit, we've allocated funding for that per the budget. They are going to be looking at receipts, expenditures, and we'll be spearheading the recruitment effort for that. So more to come on that. For the town hall, what we're looking at is a date in the fall, so September or October of this year. We put in dollars for just meeting logistics at this point. And so we'll be prepared to provide updates in coming months as to exactly how those town halls are going to run and kind of what the run of show agenda and all of that is going to be. And with that, I will turn it back over to you, Cecilia.
Yeah, so that's it for our budget and the 10,000 set aside for the town hall. I'll stop to take any questions on the budget, and then I can move on to the bylaws discussion. Again, it's a draft. It just gives you a sense of where we're at as the year goes ahead. Okay.
Good.
Okay. I will go ahead and move on to the next item in our report is the bylaws. We have begun, oh, actually, let me pass it on to Richard to discuss this one. Go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, so this is really exciting. So we'll be drafting bylaws for the committee. Here you'll see just an outline of what we're proposing to include there. Again, any questions, discussions about things that we might have missed, but it's just a work in progress and can kind of formalize how we're all operating as a group.
And you'll be getting that at your next COC meeting in June. It'll be a very big meeting, just to underscore what the chair said about quite a bit of significance. So these are really your operating systems and rules will be coming into place. Okay, any questions on that? I'm going to move on then to member nominations. In the ordinance itself, there's strict language about absences in the COC. And as the chair noted, we didn't make quorum last month. So as a result, we had to cancel our meeting. And so there's a provision that if you have 3 unexcused absences, you shall be removed from the committee. We've been on board as your IIG since the end of December, so we've started to take notes and roll call, conferring with the chair on excused and unexcused absence. And as a result of the last 5 months, we contacted committee member Steve Diaz and want to just note that he's no longer going to be serving as a COC member. His seat, which is seat number 7, is a seat for a renter protection and support members. It's now vacant. The way the process works under the ordinance is your staff, which would be us at this point, is supposed to recommend 3 nominees to the mayor's office, and then the mayor's office, can do with it what they want. So as part of that process, we've created a nomination form, a self-nomination form for people to apply broadly. Of course, we will accept, we're really interested in anybody's suggestions on who should be on that list of 3 that we have to submit to the mayor's office. So you can take a look at the resources tab on ulacoc.org for the COC member nomination form, and we encourage folks to distribute that widely. We hope our friends at House LA will do the same and get it out on your socials as well. So again, these voices are really important, so we want to make sure we have somebody who can give the time and the energy to the committee. Anything on that? And likewise, we may be doing the same for seat number 15, which is the second youth committee member. So we will likely be seeing a vacancy in that seat by next meeting, and we'll have that same form available. Okay, one last thing in my report, and that is COC chair and vice chair nominations. Again, next month on your very busy agenda, there will be an item for nominations for the chair and vice chair of next year's term. Your current chair and vice chair serve through the end of June, through this fiscal year. So we will be scheduling on the agenda elections for chair and vice chair. As of, we made available a nomination form that you should have all received. As of 12 o'clock today, we've received 2 nominations for chair and vice chair. Vice Chair Greenlee has received 1 nomination. Committee Member Jones has received 1 nomination. COC members, please, we encourage you to contribute and continue to nominate chair and vice chair candidates today during our discussion. Of course, you can always nominate on the floor of the meeting in June, but just to get it all teed up so you guys know who's been nominated. That concludes my report. Any questions? Right. Please come to the meeting next month. A lot on the agenda. Thank you.
That concludes item number 5 on the agenda. Moving now to item number 6, which is the LAHD report. Staff is going to brief us on key ULA news. We've allotted 10 minutes for LAHD to report on the following items. Update on implementation of interim homeless prevention programs, revenue and expenditures, and update on the fiscal year 24-25 ULA expenditure plan process. We'll then follow the 10-minute discussion with COC members asking questions of our esteemed staff. With that, LHD, please proceed.
All right, thank you. 10 minutes. That is going to be lucky. So good afternoon, everybody. It's good to see you, buddy. I suspect everybody's going to need to bring sack lunches at the June meeting because that's feeling like a marathon because we're going to have some program guidelines as a reminder. All right, so it's great to see everybody. I'm Greg Good. I'm Director of Strategic Engagement and Policy for the Los Angeles Housing Department. I do want to just start by making a note of something. We are clearly, certainly as a department, I think the entire United House LA family at a point of compression. There's an incredible amount of work. And I just want to make sure and make note of my team who are resolute and relentless in their work, and they are coming full throttle. And so I just want to thank them, whether it's program guidelines, briefs for council, briefs for the mayor's office, briefs for y'all, exemptions. I mean, there's stuff that's happening that we don't even have time to talk about, and it's overwhelming. And I am very cognizant of the amount of work that we're all pushing and that I'm pushing them to do. And so I want to thank my crew who's doing such an incredible job. So thank y'all. And buckle up because you all know you just got started. So, all right, to start with the expenditure plan, as you all know, there is much discussion right now around the budget. There's going to be more discussion here today, the deficit, request for backstop, et cetera. In that context, we're working towards an expenditure plan and a spending plan that will address the true up that we've discussed in a couple of different meetings here from year one, projections, cash management, et cetera. As you all know, the measure requires us that we submit an expenditure plan to this body and to council by July 1, and we will be bringing that to everyone here at that really breakfast and lunch meeting in June. So look forward to that. Next up, this body did request an update on our homelessness prevention, our interim homelessness prevention programs. And I want to do that. I'll again do it to a bit of the William Tell Overture and save for questions. The Eviction Defense Prevention Program. Oh, I've got this. Sorry. So a lot of work has been done. As a reminder, in the fiscal year 23-24 expenditure plan, eviction defense and prevention was allocated $23 million. The interim guidelines, by and large, that this group approved and that the council approved, really translated into an extension of our contract with and our work with Stay Housed LA and the Stay Housed LA Coalition. That extension has been executed and completed. And that is through June 30, 2025. And work is happening right now, as everyone can see. I mean, it's very impressive. We get quarterly stats, so these are only updated up through February 29. But as you can see, over 700 LA households with full scope legal representation. That's almost 100 cases a month. Over 2,000 city households have received limited scope eviction services. Again, really impressive, almost 300 folks per month. Outreach, we have touched over 100,000 folks with direct outreach, over 13,000 per month, and over 130 workshops have been hosted, 16 per month. Over 5,000 Angelenos have received tenant navigation services, and you all are certainly aware that really is about much closer sort of organizing and communication and outreach, helping folks avail themselves and be aware of the different resources that are available in the face of eviction or housing insecurity. That's a lot of touches. And then the rental assistance piece or the settlement assistance piece, 254 applications approved between July and February. Totaling over $3 million paid out in UD rental assistance, and the average assistance for those cases has been almost $12,500, covering an average of 10.6 months of rent. So a lot of good work is happening there and continues on. Our next program, the Tenant Outreach and Education Program. So as you recall here, the mayor's budget in this body agreed on an allocation in fiscal year 23-24 of nearly $5.5 million for tenant outreach and education. As a note, that surpassed the 2% that is prescribed in the measure, and so it will be subject to some true up in the coming year. The $23 million in eviction defense prevention was actually online or aligned with the 10% required by the measure. This one will have to true up some. We've done a lot of work. It really started with marketing and sharing out on the emergency rental assistance program, the short-term emergency assistance program. We targeted audiences in high eviction risk zip codes is identified through Stay Housed LA and our tracking of eviction filings. Targeted limited English speakers, including Spanish, Korean, simplified Chinese, Japanese, and then also low-income renters. And then we focused our outreach on areas with a high number of eviction filings. The reach was pretty impressive. We had paid media ads in 17 community newspapers all across the city, 284 out-of-home digital screens. That's, literally like when you're filling your gas tank in the Ads are coming up there. 641 radio ads or buys, digital displays on all kinds of sites, paid social, e-blasts, and then you can see over on the earned media, we've got a decent amount of coverage, 14 LAHD interviews, 18 TV placements, and a good amount of online placements as well. We then segued into, well, actually, here's an example of the collaterals in multiple languages that went out with the ERAP program, and I'm sure many of you saw this. Total campaign impressions. Look, I'm a bit of a Fred Flintstone when it comes to social media, but I'm learning from the folks who happen to work with who aren't. But over 206 million campaign impressions. I know enough to know that that's a lot. Paid campaign media impressions over 60 million, 1.19% social media click-through rate, which amounts to over 700,000, nearly 1 million click-throughs, which again, my understanding is that's a lot. In market units, 952 radio spots and print insertions. And then you can see the number of media hits and media impressions, over 145 million. And that's just on the Renters Assistance Program. Oh, wait, back. Sorry. We then went into, or segued into, as everyone recalls, the eviction moratorium expired at the end of February, and February, and we did a lot of work in communicating to folks about the resources and the facts and how to protect themselves and where to go to for resources. This is just some examples of the stuff that's been posted in our social media, on our website, et cetera. And our next steps are, and this is moving forward now, is really focusing on ensuring that folks are aware of the provision that the LA City Council approved, prohibiting any evictions on approved ERAP applicants up to May 31. Really highlighting also the ordinance protecting tenants from income discrimination, including the Rental Assistance Fund. This certainly was elevated by this body and by a whole bunch of folks when we, became aware of landlords not necessarily buying in, that it would be helpful and beneficial for us to really elevate this fact that it is illegal to decline rental payments based on income. We also communicated that to landlords in the ERAP process, making sure that they were aware of that as well. And then also protecting against financial scams. We've seen, unfortunately, and I think we talked about this at the last COC, we've seen a couple of situations where some folks tapped in and got in. And so we've been making sure that folks are aware of what not to respond to. Right? Like a text that says, Commissioner Sharma says, apply, right? So we're trying to make sure that folks are aware of that as well. And the next program we'll go to is protection from tenant harassment, or protections from tenant harassment. Recall that this program allocated, I think it was 11.3 or 11.4 million. Also, just as an FYI, as we go into the expenditure plan process, that went over the prescribed amount. So we're going to have a true up there. I think that's going to be viable and okay, and I'll explain why. But first, I'll talk about process, or what we've been able to achieve. So recall that there's really a multi-pronged approach, and this group was I think excited about it. The City Council was excited about it. One was the development of a platform to really avail ourselves of a much really higher level of technology. We'd been playing whack-a-mole ever since Tahoe passed, and that's with inadequate resources. And so that's just reacting to complaints. We're developing a platform that will hopefully allow us to connect the dots on pattern and practice around the city. So again, ex-landlord is doing this in Wilmington, and we see that's also happening, and it ends up being the same landlord who's doing this in Los Feliz. We can begin to identify pattern and practice, which is brings us much closer to meeting evidentiary standards on criminal prosecution. And so the idea here is really to make this the level of sophisticated program that it should be and that is necessary to actually really be able to identify the bad actors, the big bad actors, as well as the small bad actors. That contract amendment, and it's just a contract amendment because we already have a contract with these folks, has been executed to add those services, and we're expecting this to be implemented and rolled out in the fall of this year. Second prong is the staffing piece. And this is, everyone kind of likes it when I call it the Batman and Robin teams, right? In our 5 regional offices where you have an inspector, which is code, and an investigator, which is rent, on the ground, availing themselves of the information from the platform, from their closer sort of, connection to those areas and neighborhoods, and being able to really connect the dots with all of these pieces in a much more sort of granular rather than whack-a-mole sort of way. Those positions were approved. There's 12 positions. 3 of those are city attorney positions, okay? Now, the positions, and this is not a revelation, and you all certainly know this by now, hiring in the city of Los Angeles on a good day is painful and challenging. And I love my city, but it's a challenging process. The positions were approved at the end of October of 2023. They were just allocated by the Civil Service Commission at the end of March of this year. That coincided, as everyone is aware of, with the realization of a pretty challenging budget environment in which it's not being called a hiring freeze, but a cessation of new positions, shall we say, that are not exempted as defined by the city administrative officer are being held. Meanwhile, a sort of prioritized critical hiring process was established, but even that's on hold while we're in the budget process. And in that budget process, as everyone's probably read and heard, 2,000 vacancies were eliminated, proposed eliminated in the proposed budget that's being heard and dealt with right now. All of that is to say, and then on top of that, there is a very real concern, and I don't think this is unfair and inappropriate, about hiring human beings while we're waiting for the litigation to be resolved. That is very different than contracting. And as everyone knows, we really worked in these programs to focus as much money on continuing contracts, which didn't have consequences if we do and we're not going to lose the litigation. If you hire people predicated on these funds and then we lose, then we have a real issue in terms of people having to be let go, particularly in a budget environment in which vacancies are disappearing. All of that is to say, these positions are there. They are not being eliminated. They are not part of the vacancy elimination. They're there, but we can't hire them yet. That's just a practical reality, or we certainly have not been given the authority to hire them yet. But they are there and they're allocated, and I can't wait. And we will be there. Then also recall that because in part we did end up securing more funds, getting more funds allocated to anti-tenant harassment than was necessarily prescribed by the measure. We proposed to this group as well as to the council the idea of putting some amount of money into an RFP with legal service providers to sort of test the civil litigation route, even as we're working on the criminal route with our investigators and inspectors and the city attorney. We are currently developing the scope of work. We anticipate this RFP going out this summer, at least by the end of the summer, and that getting moving in tow. Madam Chair, you seem to have a question, but I know we'll wait. Okay. And then lastly, I know you're all aware, but as a reminder, the measure requires that 30% of all funds allocated towards the protections from anti-tenant harassment expenditure category be dedicated to community-based organizations that do the type of deep outreach and organizing that really is necessary. And that's going to be utilizing our tenant displacement tool that we're working on with SAGE, one of the community partners that we work with very closely, to really target areas where we feel like are vulnerable, where everybody feels like are vulnerable, particularly to displacement, and doing navigation services and outreach there. That's happening. And that's happening through contracts that exist with Stay Housed LA, who do outreach on the legal services provisions as well. So is there any, what else did I, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, because there's more good stuff happening. So we also have a task force, a anti-tenant harassment ordinance task force. And this began, hello commissioners today. This sort of began to materialize once the tenant harassment ordinance was passed in 2021, and even before ULA. This task force is comprised of investigators and inspectors, as well as members of our policy team, some of whom y'all know. They look at complaints and they look at cases. And we have determined that the LHD has the authority to issue what are called ACE citations, administrative code enforcement citations. 25 harassment cases have been given ACE citations, or excuse me, 25 ACE citations have been issued to landlords, and then some cases have been referred to the city attorney. They have not yet. They have not been adjudicated yet, but we are moving forward there, and we are excited. I mean, excited is the wrong way to put it, but citations are being let out. The process. So the citation process lists the 16 categories of harassment violations. Citations are issued by unit, so there can be multiple citations per building. And in fact, I believe, and I could be wrong, but of the 25 citations that have been issued, multiples were to one landlord for multiple units. This prevents somebody from just, from scope being sort of undermined by one citation. Fines per violation vary based on prior citations. First citation is 250. So again, you could get multiple 250s in one situation. Second is 500, third is 1,000. And then there's an appeal process. The initial review is an initial review by the city attorney. They appeal that review, or if it's upheld, then there's an administrative hearing conducted by an independent hearing officer, sort of like almost like an ALJ. And then they can pass that. They're free to appeal in state court. This is too small for you to read, but it's in what was posted. This is just so you have a sense of reference and context. This is the administrative citation form. And like I say, it's going out. And I know y'all have questions, so I look forward to that.
Actually, we're going to take questions on this portion before we move into the revenue.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you, Greg. That was thorough, but I guess I have questions. So if I heard you correctly, you are one saying that the money that was allotted, the 11 point whatever million, is you spent beyond that?
No.
Okay.
Was it 11.2? You check that for me. The money that was allocated, recall that right when the mayor's budget came out last year, it was only for 6 categories versus the 10. It prescribed what the number amount would be, that we were limited to that. And frankly, it was not in any way connected with the prescribed percentages in the thing. The 11 plus, Commissioner, surpassed the 3% that it's prescribed in the measure. Or the 11 million plus, yeah, went past 3%. That's what I was alluding to.
Got it. And so what has been spent? So if we go back, I'm hearing that none of the hirings happen, right? And
Right.
that the citation, like you've just done 25, it just launched. And I also saw that a task force is being created. You've spent some on the contract. So I guess I'm curious what has been done and how much of that you've used. Are you holding money over then for these positions? Because the intention was to use that 11 million for these 12. Also, I mean, has there been a discussion about a hiring freeze? I understand citywide, but this is ULA taxpayer money that should be for positions with the assumption of ongoing. I understand the layer, but I just wanted to know if that's a discussion, a conversation we've had on is there an exception for ULA money?
Frankly, no. I mean, discussions, yes, a gazillion discussions. In terms of, do my best at explaining this. I stipulate to the fact that I may do a poor job, but there's a couple of factors that almost more complicate this. Even if you didn't have the litigation, we'd still be in this sort of mishigas around the hiring freeze, right? It would be easier at that point. And this is your friendly director of strategic engagement and policy talking. But it would be easier at that point to say, okay, look, this money will live. This is a special fund. There's no reason not to do this. Even though there is a freeze on lots of, including frankly, other special funded positions at LAHD. For context, y'all, LAHD is pretty unique in the city. We less than 8% of our entire budget is general fund. We are funded by 46 different special funds. It is an accounting and tracking nightmare that I would not be capable of on my best day. And so we've had other vacancies from special funds taken away in this budget process. Lots of discussions going to be happening on that over the next few weeks. And that's not, again, that's not just us. That's 40 different departments. Everybody's got some special funds. Everybody's losing vacancies and navigating this. But that would be a different kind of discussion. What compounds or what makes it more complicated here is just the practical reality of hiring somebody, and then if that special fund dies, for lack of a better way to put it, and none of us in here believe that's going to happen. We are all super confident we are going to prevail. But when hiring people, that's a real, you have to consider that cliff. And there's no appetite, to hire folks when you can't guarantee that's going to continue down the line. In terms, Commissioner, of what's being spent, it is true. Like the budget to actuals versus what's allocated is a very different thing. It just takes time to spend money, right? And so, for example, with the scope of work being done on the civil litigation RFP, no cash is out the door yet. It's all in the House LA Fund. The contracts with the CBOs, some of that has actually gone out, but there's still but it's committed money, if that makes sense. So protections from tenant harassment, you see, there's very little cash that's actually gone out, but it's committed is what it amounts to. Same with tenant outreach and education. We've pretty much spent most of that out. Actually, there's still cash to go there. Eviction defense, that doesn't show up as spent, but it's all committed to the contract extension that's been approved with Stay Housed LA. So maybe I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
We all understand, but how much? In other words, is there still money in the budget that we owe, including committed?
The only money that's not committed, we're going to talk about a little later, which is the $11 million remaining in the income support for rent burdened at-risk seniors and persons with disabilities.
That's the only thing uncommitted.
Everything else is, we have a budget. Everything but spent and committed.
Just want to give me a second.
Okay.
Everything else is committed, right, Kelly? I think so. Yes, everything else is committed because there was no money allocated for alt models. There was no money allocated for AC rehab. Everything's committed on multifamily, which is 56.4 million. There's 300,000 still in admin for our capacity building, and an RFQ is being developed as we speak. Got a draft. And then there was no money for operating assistance, no money for home ownership. And then all the 30 million, in fact, by the end of this month, Commissioner Sharma, you asked me earlier, by the end of this month, the entire 30 million that went to short-term emergency assistance will be out the door. That included 12 million of the 23 that was from income assistance. That's out. The 11 million we'll talk about here in a bit. We really are anxious to get that out. You see the tenant outreach and education, eviction defense, protections from tenant harassment. So it's committed.
Will you add
Oh, I'm
that?
sorry.
Will you add a column?
Yeah.
Committed column?
Sure.
I do. So my concern is, so here we are, right? And tenant harassment, as you know, has like been very important to
Yeah.
what we've heard over and over. And that's why it's one of the priority categories too. So if a hiring freeze continues, right? And it looks like this
Right.
could be something that treads into next year. Do we need a new plan, right? To spend the money? I mean, committed dollars doesn't lead to actual
Yeah.
work, right? And so I know there are some committed, for example, the RFPs to legal aid providers. I know you're working on this, but I'm guessing a lion share of it is to these 15 positions.
That is the big part.
Right, that are actually going to do the work. And so that means the work's at a standstill. And I think that that begs for a conversation about either separating the funds to get some of the positions done, because otherwise we're frozen, right? In some way, there's a little bit being done. I understand.
So, and obviously it's y'all's prerogative to have as much conversation as you want. I would throw out a couple of things. One is that a lot of work and process has gone into the approval of that plan, not just by this group, but also by the city council and the mayor. Two, it is very much the framework that the ad hoc and the working group working on the permanent program guidelines basically are adopting for the permanent program. Three, and you're way more expert, Commissioner Raymond is, a lot of folks way more expert on certainly Commissioner Jones on the issues or on sort of the paradigmatic work of anti-tenant harassment enforcement and tracking. My respectful take would be that this is a human heavy piece of work, and that those investigators and inspectors are crucial to connecting the work. And I'm very confident based on the Tahoe ordinance, based on certainly what I hear from council, from the mayor's office, that there's no reticence about going forward with this. And that once the litigation is resolved, I don't think we're going to be held up on those positions, even with the budget dynamics, because to your original point, even though there's things that happen with different special funds, I don't think there's going to be any real resistance about moving forward with those positions. And as frustrating as it feels at this moment, we're only talking about some months. And as much time as it takes to even get humans, I would be pained by the idea of sort of relinquishing those already now civil service allocated positions, because they're there. They're not taken away. They're held. And that's like gold in the city of Los Angeles.
Maybe we need to make sure that we get monthly updates on progress and see if there might be a need for the commission to think about and ask to city council. I mean, I haven't thought it through
Right.
in terms of like some of the hiring, but maybe monthly updates. If you think this is 2 months away, obviously, right? Why would you create a whole new plan? But if we're talking about 2 city months, it could be a year. That's a problem, right?
It's a fair point.
Because it doesn't stem this really actual.
Yeah, I would urge with the perm guidelines that we think long term with it, and if we're convinced, and you're going to have an opportunity, right, with the permanent guidelines, like imminently. If we're convinced that this structure and that this approach is the way to best address tenant harassment, then I think our recommendation would be stay the course, have as many conversations as we all can have, but stay the course. Don't give up these positions. Let's move forward, and let's win. I mean, is what I mean, because I'm personally convinced that technology alone, the opportunity for litigation alone will not suffice. We need boots on the ground, and that's going to be humans, and they are allocated. There's no way around that process. But yes, and you know that I'll talk to you as much as we need to on that. Okay.
So we have I'm sorry, one point. We have a motion that we'll be making later that will include language about watching for those employment opportunities. You said something about relinquishing the allocation of,
I don't even know how we would do it. I was just responding to the idea that maybe we sort of reboot the plan. If we can't get the people hired, that if y'all wanted to, and it's certainly in your prerogative to think about other ways to go about this that would not be reliant on those positions. And my respectful and loving rejoinder is hold those, that those are gold. Those are going to be hard to get back in the environment.
Yeah. I have a question for the tenant outreach campaign. Do you have a data on how many people were helped with that by zip code or city council district? Do you have that data? Because it's a great job, but I don't see what is the numbers. How many people?
I don't know. We can report back. My guess, Commissioner Morales, and I'll ask if is Sophia here? Sophia, would you mind joining me if that's fine? I think it's hard with social media impressions and media impressions that you don't get data about where they're at. I don't think. I know that we have the best social media data analyst on the planet, and Sophia Steiner, who you'll meet here in a second, who captures all the data analytics, but we'll ask. So yeah. Do you have the question? Oh, is there any way for us to know what council districts are seeing different stuff?
Yes, so when we're doing paid ads, we can actually target specific zip codes, and we can see the impressions on neighborhoods and zip codes of who's actually seeing the ads. And we could refocus if we needed to, more funding for specific neighborhoods.
But we didn't see any person who come in and use that, who has a result that that help was good for them. Is if like I see here like for the what is this? The renter assistance program, right? It's like, what is how to help them directly? It's only the information, but anything specific directly to the community. It's only the information. That is all, right?
By the way, this is Sophia Steiner, Public Relations Specialist for the Strategic Engagement and Policy Team. I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a way to track what the outcome is of the impressions. I just don't think we have that capacity.
Okay.
Is it-
For impressions, it really depends on what we're looking at. If we're looking for what we usually track is like click-through rate. It's how many people are actually going to our website, or how many people are trying to contact us through the ads that they see, or otherwise go to our website later after they see the ad. It's actually how many successful interactions we have where people are engaging with our content. After that, though, that's kind of the extent of the tracking. So it's really based off data that we're collecting for people that are applying or for questions that we get asked. So that's kind of on our team from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Commissioner.
are there other questions regarding just this portion? Because we have way more to do, so I'd like to push this along. Hearing no questions, we are moving on to revenue and expenditures, which I think
Covered expenditures by and large. What I will just quickly do though is point out, and I think folks know this, last month was our best month. We collected, or not last month, March. The last month we have data for 33 million on 45 transactions. We are up to an average of 25 million per month. And you can see the totals there. So I think that those are outcomes we can be excited about. And that's it. Oops. Yeah. I'll hold on that.
then that closes item number 6. Yes?
Unless there's other questions.
We're moving on now to an action item regarding the interim guidelines. LHD is going to present on the interim guidelines for income support for at-risk for seniors and people with persons with disabilities. We will then allow the COC to ask questions and deliberate before taking action on this item. With that, Greg, please
Okay.
proceed.
So, as everyone recalls, we touched on this a little bit just a minute ago, in the fiscal year 23-24 budget, as well as the expenditure plan. We had 23 million allocated to the income support for rent burden at-risk seniors and persons with disabilities. That is actually, that's slightly over the allocation. No, that's actually aligned with the allocation in the prescribed allocation in the prescribed allocation in the measure, which is 10%. The process in which we were developing interim guidelines sort of lifted the veil for us on the difficulty and the challenge of this program, in that it's one program that is really not immediately in our wheelhouse. And it presents some particular challenges. The short-term emergency assistance program really about addressing rent shock based on some economic shock, and really as just what it's called, short-term emergency assistance. The income assistance program is really, and it's an important distinction, and I know you all recognize it, but it's important that the public recognize the difference between rental assistance and income assistance. The presumption with income assistance is that folks have all kinds of different things that they're dealing with, whether it's healthcare, a car, or family challenges or what have you, and that the seniors and the persons with disabilities that we're working to address, that the ULA family is working to address with this, are particularly vulnerable because they don't necessarily have the potential for some quick uptick in in income to try to address those things. And so the presumption is that the income assistance, the cash assistance, will afford them the opportunity to make decisions, right? And scholarship shows that that works, that people make good decisions when given the opportunity to make good decisions with resources. What we were trying to do in looking at the interim was figure out how to best get that money in seniors and persons with disabilities' hands. And we ran up against a number of different walls. We looked at time-limited subsidies, which many of you are familiar with, but that has this sort of cliff. It's time-limited, and so 2 years, and then there's a cliff. Plus LASA, which is the main game in town in terms of administering time-limited subsidy programs, didn't have the capacity to suddenly do 23 million, so it was a lot of challenge. This group, the board, or this commission and the council approved a reallocation of $12 million from that fund to the short-term emergency assistance program, contingent on it being prioritized towards seniors and persons with disabilities at 30% or lower AMI. We did that, and that was approved, and that became a 30 million short-term emergency assistance program. We still want to, you all want to get that $11 million at the door. So with that, we're proposing an interim, and this is strictly an interim proposal. This is not the permanent program guideline proposal, but a program that basically avails us of things we learned and gathered over the course of the short-term emergency assistance program. First of all, the budget is 11 million. That's what we have. That's what you all know is left. And the premise is simple. The income support program will provide one-time cash assistance payments to eligible households with seniors and/or persons with disabilities. Here's the background. During the process of the ULA short-term emergency assistance program, we had essentially identified a constellation of folks that meet these criteria who had more burden, more financial burden than made them eligible for short-term emergency assistance. Recall that we made the strategic decision to focus the ERAP program on folks where 6 months back rent would take care of their situation, so that we weren't giving money to landlords or giving money to folks where it wouldn't make a difference in whether or not they ended up on the street or not. And so if you had a debt that far exceeded 6 months rent, then you were essentially not eligible for ERAP. And given that we had almost $500 million in requests, there was no shortage of people that fit into that category. But what that also did is it provided a universe, and we think, at least 500 people, a universe of seniors and persons with disabilities who have over $20,000 in back debt and in back rent. And in fact, a universe of folks who on average have $26,000 in back rent or $26,000 in debt, and they average $2,000 a month in rent. So our proposal is to provide them with $20,000 cash assistance grants. Payments will be made directly to the tenants. There's no application portal. We know who they are. We have their applications. We go back to the process of validating their addresses, validating that they're not duplicates, et cetera, et cetera. And we will only be serving tenants who've already applied. The idea here is to address sort of multiple paths of objectives. We want to get money on the street fast. So doing a new portal and going through a whole nother application process and spending all that money, too expensive, too long. We have a universe that is in need. We know who they are. So we basically re-up the infrastructure with our contractor who did ERAP, extend that, they administer, and we get we get a lot of people's challenges solved with a significant cash assistance grant. This is again an interim program, but we can learn a lot. This can be really meaningful and really substantive in our development of our permanent program guidelines on this. Quick notes on eligibility requirements: household with a member who is either senior, at least 65 years old, or a person with disability, and that's a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities. They have to have applied for the ULA rental assistance program, but needs exceeded the program's ability to adequately address, or available funding was exhausted. Income no more than 50% AMI, rent no more than $4,000 per month, and they have to be currently living in Los Angeles. So I know we're short on time, so I will simply ask or say we would recommend and request your support on this moving forward. If the COC approves these interim program guidelines, we will proceed to advance these to the LA City Council and the mayor and to try to move as quickly as possible.
Thank you for your presentation. I'd now like to open it up to the floor for questions.
So I understand, will it take care of all the people that apply, but we were not able to take care of them, or is it, I mean, you're talking about 500?
Here, we think there may be up to 2,000 in the universe, and this would get to about 500. What we don't know yet, quite frankly, Commissioner, I don't have any perfect answers on this, is how many folks, once we go through the process of double checking addresses, double checking duplicates, do they still live in LA? All of that tends to call folks out. Some folks, frankly, sadly, unfortunately, may have moved since then. So we're not totally sure where that gets us.
But in general, we're talking about around 500 out of 2,000.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be.
Yeah, although the 2,000 could shrink.
Yeah, I understand.
Exactly.
But it's
yes,
not going to
Commissioner.
shrink to 500.
Yeah, no.
So there will be still people out of luck. I understand.
That was my question too. Any additional questions? Laura?
Yeah, so it's, just to get it right, it's 20,000 regardless of debt. Okay, so it's just like same payment to everyone. Okay.
Yeah, they presumptively have debt exceeding that anyway, otherwise they would have probably qualified. And again, in that number, it's not magic. You know, we felt like the average for that universe is 26,000, and it doesn't get that completely. First of all, that's an average, right? But it's meaningful enough that it could really game change, and we felt like that was a good number. But there won't be any like means testing because that just adds costs and adds time.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Would anybody like to make a motion to? Oh, yes, of course.
So, 500 people get, would it make sense to give less and to more people?
Well, it's a fair question, Commissioner. our assumption, and that's certainly something that can be discussed here, our feeling was that a concurrent goal with getting people money, for lack of a better way to put it, sort of like with ERAP, is that it's better to get money, to get some problems resolved, right? Get money in the hands of folks where that money is actually going to provide them with housing security, as opposed to chipping away at it. And so when we looked at the average debt, and there's no magic to it, right? But when we looked at that average debt of 26,000, frankly, more than 20 starts feeling, well, you just really start shrinking the pool, but that even at 20,000 is going to can make a discernible difference. And so we could, that just felt like the right number.
Okay.
And I'm not stipulating to science, I just,
Is there a way of figuring out which households like that 20,000 would actually resolve their rent debt in order to keep them housed, or?
Well, frankly, Commissioner, probably not, because again, we're treating it as income assistance. So we're not asking if they're spending it on rent, right?
Yeah,
We're,
But in their application. Would
I mean, I
be
think, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll get
a good point. Yeah,
information. Yeah.
this income assistance. Yeah.
I mean, look, we share the like some of the wonder about it. It's not there are no perfect frameworks with this.
And we are doing it, I understand, and we are doing it in order to get the money out fast, which is, how fast would it get out?
I'm not sure yet, to be honest with you, because we still have to get to council. So council's got to approve. We're trying to fast track everything. We've got an estimate on what it would cost. I think our goal was to get this money out the door this summer, which isn't far.
Yeah, summer. Okay.
Hence, and by the way, there's the elegance of same contractor, no portal.
No, I understand. I'm just saying, if
yeah.
we're already going through all of this, and let's not do it a year from today.
Delay it a year from, no, totally.
Because then these people will be on the street.
Yeah, no, well taken.
I want to clarify, this is only one time to give that money?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, one time for how long? Is one time?
One-time cash assistance payment of $20,000.
Okay, because I remember that we talking like maybe in 2 years, every 2 years moving.
So that was one of the scenarios we looked at on interim program guidelines for this program, which concerned us, and I think it concerned this body, in that there became this question, and as you know, this is a conversation we're having with the permanent program, is what happens after 2 years? You hit this cliff. This is where there's an identifiable debt and get taken care of versus basically a basic income program, which is what I think we're probably looking at in the permanent program. There you still have that cliff question, but yeah, this is a one-time payment based on a request.
Okay.
Given that discussion, do I have a motion from the floor to approve the interim guidelines?
I'll move.
Thank you. So this is where I fall apart.
Was it seconded? I couldn't hear.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so, Committee Chair Coulter. Committee Vice Chair Greenlee.
Yes.
Committee Member Chen. Committee Member Gaeta. Committee Member Jones.
Yes.
Committee Member Lipa.
Yes.
Committee Member Mendez Lemus. Committee Member Morales. Committee Member Raymond.
Yes.
Committee Member Reed.
Yes.
Committee Member Sanchez. Committee Member Sharma.
Yes.
So we have a total of 8 yeses. So, Madam Chair, the item passes.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Okay, we're gonna do a little bit of gymnastics right now. We're going to recess the regular meeting so that we can we can start our special meeting. So I am going to call to order the special meeting, the time being 4:04. I now call to order the special meeting. Roll call, please.
Yes. Committee Chair Coulter,
Here.
Committee Vice Chair Greenlee,
Here.
Committee Member Seal, Committee
Yeah.
Member Chen,
Says here.
Sayes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, so I'm so sorry. I wasn't ahead of runs. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Committee Member Chen, Committee Member Gaeta, Committee Member Jeffrey, Committee Member Jones,
Yes.
Committee Member Lipa,
Yes.
Committee Member Mendez Lemus, Committee Member Morales,
Yes.
Committee Member Raymond,
Yes.
Committee Member Reed,
Yes.
Committee Member Sanchez, Committee Member Sharma. So we have 8 members here. We have a quorum.
Great. We are now going to take public comments specifically on the agenda item. I want to name the agenda item, which is a recommendation on the ULA budget. Our city attorney, Ms. Cheng, with your assistance and the assistance of our interpreters, will be asking for public commenters requiring language interpretation before they begin. As a reminder, interpretation will be simultaneous. So for those of you that are in person and do not speak Spanish, you will need a headset to hear English interpretation.
We don't have any speakers.
Now we will move on.
Oh, excuse
We
me.
do have a speaker card.
Oh, thank you. I'll come get your card. Sorry about that. I'd like to call up Speaker Joe Donlin.
Good afternoon, Joe Donlan with the United House LA Coalition. First, I appreciate the whole team here, the IIG and everyone for agendizing the discussion and action item around the ULA funds in the city budget. This morning, a couple hundred members of our coalition and partners throughout the state, and along with Mayor Bass, the Council President Krikorian, Commissioner Jones, and many others, stood together at City Hall to oppose the Taxpayer Deception Act. And I share that because that's a part of the context of every one of our conversations about ULA, because it's an existential threat against ULA, but particularly critical as we consider actions around funding ULA programs going forward. Why? Because the opposition or the proponents of that Taxpayer Deception Act are using ULA to fundraise currently and potentially to persuade voters to pass their measure, which would ultimately repeal ULA. And they want to tell a story of the failure, tell the lie of the failure of ULA. And by not committing more funding to ULA programs, whether that's in the form of a backstop or just prioritizing as the city council can do to invest more dollars into the programs established by ULA, we feed into that narrative and we hand that win. And so the conversation in the budget hearings at City Council for the last few weeks have been about what's financially prudent. And there was a discussion about tapping the brakes. Is it okay to go on a little bit? About tapping the brakes on ULA spending while litigation was still pending. And there was this notion that, well, we're going to win and it's going to be soon. And so, why create more trouble? We have issue with that assumption that it's going to be resolved soon. We completely agree that we're going to win. But the soon part is of concern. There was even suggestion that maybe September, August, there could be resolution. But our understanding from legal counsel is that a resolution is not likely to be received from the state appellate courts until December or later. And that's assuming no extensions would be granted. And so from now until then, what is that, about 7 months? Potentially more. And so we're talking about potentially 7 or more months of no new ULA dollars being committed. And so you'll see in the letter that we submitted a variety of other reasons why it's financially prudent, for all the reasons that you all are very familiar about and care about in terms of protecting people, keeping people housed, and preventing the financial strain that comes when folks become unhoused and then require even more services. So it's the right thing to do, but it's also the financially prudent thing to do. And so we asked the COC to take the action that's on the agenda today to recommend to the city council to spend the ULA funding to commit dollars to the ULA programs while litigation is still pending, be that a backstop or whatever other avenue they need to take. So I appreciate your time and look forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Do we have a call-in? Do we have any call-in speakers?
No.
No. Okay, great. Thank you all. That concludes public comment. We can now move on to item number 4, which is the action. I will hand it over to you, Sir Vice Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Espinoza Coulter. I am, and I want to express my appreciation for the comments from the campaign chair of the United House LA Coalition. What I'm getting ready to propose right now, I offer in the context of, as was mentioned, that the city council is currently in its budget process for fiscal year 24-25, that the mayor included approximately $400 million for United House LA in her budget proposal. That the council in its deliberation seems to be hesitating, expressing a little bit of reluctance, specifically around uncertainty associated with the California Business Roundtable measure that will be considered could possibly be considered by voters in the fall, and then the ongoing litigation against ULA. I'm proposing this because I think it's consistent with our position, and it's not intended to be antagonistic to council of the mayor for sure, and with eyes wide open with respect to the capacity limitations that are presented by uncertainty with money coming in with the housing department. So I respect that, but I believe that what I'm getting ready to propose is consistent with our position that we've held consistently through the last, whatever it is, 14 months that we've been meeting. It's absolutely consistent with commentary that we provided for council, as was described by the interim inspector general, about expenditure of funds above the $150 million. So I read this as written only as something for us to react to, and so we'll welcome questions and commentary and adjustment. And I actually have an amendment already to it, so bear with me while I work through this. So the motion reads, while Mayor Bass's budget projects over $400 million in United House LA or ULA revenues for the fiscal year 2024-2025, hearings at the City Council Committee on Budget, Finance, and Innovation have indicated that City Council and the Mayor's Office are apprehensive to spend ULA dollars until litigation is resolved. Negotiations on the fiscal year 24-25 budget are ongoing. So we're in the middle of the budget negotiations right now. Legal counsel to United House LA estimates that the pending litigation is likely to last into 2025. Waiting until the litigation is resolved to spend the money already raised by Measure ULA would place essential programs at risk and prevent the city from adequately preparing themselves for ULA's full rollout. The Taxpayer Protection and Governance Act, or the California Business Roundtable Act, is a statewide ballot measure that's slated for the fall of 2024 that has been officially opposed by the city of Los Angeles. Across California, local jurisdictions recognize that this is a measure that would severely damage the ability of localities to raise funds for essential programs. Additionally, the measure would force Measure ULA to return to the ballot box for a second time and undo much of the progress that has been made over the last 2 years. Full funding for Measure ULA to ensure a strong start for its programs will demonstrate how critical local funding measures are and will be an important part of the campaign against the ballot measure. ULA has already proven to be an effective program. In 1 year, 1 calendar year, the measure has raised approximately $250 million. Moreover, with just $150 million in its program's first year, some of the ULA outcomes include, as we've heard today, eviction defense representation and services for over 3,000 Los Angeles low-income Los Angeles households, $30 million worth of short-term rental assistance for over 11,000 households, the development of nearly 800 units of affordable housing, the creation of 10,000 union construction jobs. I therefore move that the United to House LA Citizens Oversight Committee recommend that the Los Angeles City Council fully fund ULA to match the projected revenues listed in Mayor Bass's budget by including an allocation of $405 million for United to House LA programs in its FY 2024-2025 budget. I further move that the United House LA Citizen Oversight Committee recommends that the Los Angeles City Council establish a ULA spending plan that includes backstop funds to ensure that ULA funds are expended while litigation awaits resolution. And I further move that the United House LA Citizen Oversight Committee recommends that the Los Angeles City Council makes Measure ULA FY 2024-2025 funds eligible for immediate expenditure as the revenue is collected. And then I want to amend this motion by adding another clause that says, I further move that the United to House LA Citizen Oversight Committee recommend to the City Council that it unfreeze the 15 positions allocated to LAHD, the Los Angeles Housing Department, by the Civil Service Commission to staff the expeditious implementation of Measure ULA.
Thank you, Vice Chair Greenlee. Would anybody like to respond?
How did we arrive at the 405 million number come from?
So I think there's 2 answers to that question. We took it from the mayor's budget proposal that was presented shortly after the State of the City address, so in the last 30 days.
And how did who came up with that number? I'm just wondering.
Yeah,
Seems so accurate.
it's very specific, yeah. Does anybody happen to know what answer that is? I'm sure they did a full regression analysis of all the real estate being sold in the city in the next 12 months. I'm not sure.
Do you have another question?
No.
Okay. No. All right, then we need a second for the, great, thank you, Laura. Ms. Chang, would you?
Yes, I'll take the roll. Committee Chair Coulter,
Yes.
Committee Vice Chair Greenlee,
Yes.
Committee Member Chen, Committee Member Gaeta, Committee Member Jones,
Yes.
Committee Member Lipa, Committee Member Mendez Lemus, Committee Member Morales, Committee Member Raymond, Committee Member Reed, Committee Member Sanchez, Committee member Sharma.
Yes.
So we have, that's 8 yeses. So Madam Chair, the item passes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. That adjourns our special meeting. We are now, do I need to give you the time of adjournment? 4:19. We are now going to resume our regular meeting. And we are resuming with item number 8, which is future agenda items. We will now take future agenda items from the floor. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
this is you.
that's fine. So just to give you a heads up, we've talked a lot about a packed agenda for June. We intend to come to you with a package for the permanent guidelines for all of the programs. We also intend to bring you a updated budget based on how it's going with the budget discussions. We hope to have an update on the expenditure plan as well. We hope to bring you your bylaws, excuse me, telemarketing. We also intend to, we may be bringing you also another vacancy on your body. All of that is in the works. We also want to be mindful of the fact that we may not have resolved all issues outstanding on the permanent guidelines. And so and also because this is such a significant program, we want to make sure we have enough time for deliberation. So we're going to be requesting your availability for a second meeting in June, just in case we need that additional meeting to finish the work on the permanent guidelines, because it will be substantial. So please, when you get a request from us, we're looking at a meeting, I think, Kevin, what's the date we're looking at? I want to say the 4th week of June. June 27th. So we'll be polling the members on that. But that's what we have in mind, and we're open to other agenda items for the month of June. 28th. Okay. We'll be in touch. And I'm sure that's our plan.
For the guidelines?
Yeah.
Is it a full readout?
So, yeah, I think that's a great question. One way to do this, if we're assured that we'll have a quorum for a second meeting in June, one way to do this is to have an initial reading of it and really a full presentation on the guidelines, and then take a vote in that second meeting in June. That way, there's plenty of time for public comment in 2 settings, that initial meeting in June, the second meeting in June. It's lots of time to deliberate. So that might be another approach if we're assured that we have a quorum for that second meeting in June. I'm hearing direction from the chair. That's where you want to go.
I agree. I'm just looking at their calendars and
Okay.
yeah, I think that's true.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. That's all we have for future agenda items. We're welcome to take any other suggestions for that agenda. Oh, yeah. Well, we were also supposed to give you a report on our actions in this first 6 months of this year. I think we're going to table that for July. It's just overfull. I think that will probably make your head explode. So we'll take that into the July meeting.
Okay. Okay.
Any other items?
Are there any more items from the floor? I think we have just closed item number 8 and have opened ourselves to adjournment. Thank you so much. That concludes our agenda. We're adjourned. And we're early or on time.
Congratulations for
Thank
22.
you.
Woohoo! Thank you.
Thanks. I covered your names, so it's not my best day.
Jacob.
Thank you.
Questions for